for 2. Kickers are extra, I give them the boot. Ooh, going for 2. Sit back, relax while I grab me a brew. Ooh, now I'm reclining while putting my time and I'm ready to go. My spine is aligning and much my lineups, my bank account grow. I am so rich, but knowledge is all that I'm leaving it with. Ooh, listen to this, multiple options, how far can I get? Ooh, DFS Dynasty Redraft tonight, I'm not finishing last. I'm finishing past any and all, I am looking to last. What else? This spot is popping and I am so locked in and only opening the door when it is opportunity knocking. And all of these spots keep on talking and talking. So what are we talking? What kind of alignment? And running it deep, even players forgotten or came from the bottom or hitting that top end. And this spot is popping, yeah, this spot is popping. And woo! This is the armchair, yeah. Put up your arms, yeah. Sound the alarm, yeah, yeah, yeah. Woo!
What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 272 of the Armchair Fantasy Show. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lambert. You can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. Of course, we are part of the Going for Two Live podcast network, and we're live here every Wednesday on Facebook Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch on all major podcast networks. And, of course, we're in the Going for Two app for iOS and Android. If you are on Twitter, unfortunately, our live stream cannot accept comments from Twitter. So go find us on YouTube, goingfor2.com/goingfor2live. And you can find us there. Comment on the show and make sure you hit that subscribe button as well while you're there. Let me go ahead and introduce my co-host, as always, Mr. Ryan Searfoss. You can follow him on Twitter at Foss534. What's up, Ryan?
Not much, man. Just getting ready to enjoy Isaiah Likely season.
Yeah, he's been balling out in the preseason, man. He's been looking good. Good stuff. And we got, 2 weeks left? Less than 2 weeks left now, right?
Dude, it can't come fast enough.
Yeah, agreed. All right, also joining us tonight for the first time on the podcast, Mr. Pat Fitzmorris. He's the managing editor of FantasyPros and BettingPros and host of Fitz on Fantasy podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Fitz_FF. What's up, Pat?
Hey, Jeff and Ryan, great to join you guys. Man, it's all about to go down. I think we're getting like the vast majority of the home league drafts probably in the next, 9 days, 8 days. Yep. It is crunch time. Yep. Like we talk about players all year round, but most people, it's go time. We're in the sweet spot, man. The war zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All my
it's
friends
the best time to draft, too.
Yeah, agreed. It's a lot of fun. And my friends are picking up their phones now, like looking at their leagues and asking me a million questions now, like things we've been talking about all summer and all this. And they're asking me like, who's Brian Robinson and all this. So it's kind of interesting. For so long.
I mean, you should tell them they have to watch our show year round to get that info.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's the proper thing to do.
I agree 100%. So, Pat, for those that don't know who you are, kind of give us an idea of what you do in the fantasy space for Fantasy Pros and as well as your podcast as well.
Yeah, so just right now I'm kind of managing all the freelancers for Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, and we have a lot of them. Yeah, Jeff, you are among that fine group, one of our more illustrious contributors. So yeah, that, and then, trying to produce my own content, keep my rankings up to date, do the Fitz on Fantasy podcast once a week, do the Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast once a week, although we're about to go on hiatus during the season. So yeah, that's about it. And, I've been at it for a while, I guess, like doing rankings, I think 2000 was like my first year of doing in-season rankings. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Wow, good stuff. All right, let's talk some football.
News and notes from around the league.
All right, news and notes is always brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's fantasy football with no waiver wires, no set lineups, no worrying about injuries. With their best ball league, you do the fun part, and that's draft. It's like a mock draft you can win money from. Download the Underdog Fantasy app for iOS or Android. Use our promo code GF2. Get a 100% deposit match up to $100. And then for as low as $3, you can join one of our Going for Two leagues or another contest in the lobby, like the Best Ball Mania 3 contest with over $10 million in prizes, $2 million to first place. All you do is download the app, use promo code GF2, get your deposit match, and win some money. All right, so we got tons of camp notes that we got to scroll through here. I'm going to try to hit on some of the more important ones. And the first one I want to talk about here is the guy that's been sort of lauded as a breakout candidate this year. People have him sort of at the low end wide receiver 1, a high end wide receiver 2. I know Ryan's a big supporter of this guy too. But Pat, let me go to you first on this one. Michael Pittman recently carved up the Lions secondary, I guess, in one of their cross camps. What are your thoughts on Pittman this year?
I'm pretty excited. The quarterback change is a big one for him. Matt Ryan has kind of always supported these wide receiver 1 seasons. I mean, obviously, a lot of those wide receiver 1 seasons were Julio Jones, but also Roddy White's, and a couple pretty big seasons from Calvin Ridley. So I think it's an upgrade for him there. But he just, he showed the ability to command a lot of targets last year. He's pretty clearly the alpha receiver there. They don't have a lot else at wide receiver or tight end for that matter. And he's just a big dude who's good at contested catches, and yet he can get open for a bigger guy. It seemed like he found ways to get the separation he needed last year. So I'm pretty excited. I'm willing to take him inside the top 25.
Yeah, I think people didn't realize how good a season he had last year. People are always kind of down on him, but I think people, us, obviously, we pay attention to this kind of stuff, but some of the people that don't pay attention all year long, I mean, he had over 1,000 yards last year, a really good season for his second year. Ryan, let me go to you. I know you talked about it a little bit on the podcast already, but give me your thoughts on Pittman going forward.
I mean, he just 1 target shy of 130 targets with Carson Wentz last year and caught that 1,000-yard mark. He just didn't have touchdowns, but guess what? You're adding Matt Ryan to that, like he said, and that automatically improves the offense. I like Alec Pierce across from him. I think he helps him out just enough because it's a competent wide receiver. And, man, he's in my top 10. I'm all about it. He could be 140, 150 targets with Matt Ryan.
Easy.
Just like you said, he force feeds the ball to the guys he likes. And what's there not to like with that size 6 speed combo?
Yeah, and Ryan's going to drop back to pass and wonder where the defense is because it's going to be the best offensive line he's ever played behind probably. He's used to having guys in his face all the time, so he's going to be back there with all kinds of time.
And they have to play the run there because of Jonathan Taylor. It's a dream come true for Matt Ryan. It's one of his best situations in a while.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's go over to Buffalo camp here. A couple notes coming out of Buffalo camp. One of them, I'm going to go to you first, Ryan, because you've been kind of down on this guy all season or all offseason. It's Gabriel Davis. Basically saying there's nothing much standing in the way from Stephon Diggs and Gabriel Davis playing 90% of the snaps. What are your thoughts now going 2 weeks into the season? Are you still down on Davis?
Dude, down on Davis is just – that's a rude way to put it. I'm not down on Davis. I'm just not top 24 Davis like everybody else yet. I think he's really good. I think there's talent. He's talented, but you got Diggs who's going to get his 140 targets. You're going to see Shakir get a little bit. They brought James Cook to get some dump offs to the running back because he's so dynamic as a receiver out of the backfield. They want to get I just blanked on his name.
Isaiah McKenzie.
They want to get Isaiah McKenzie because he's such a little gadget player. And they have and they had Dawson Knox. There's a lot of weapons for him. I just don't love the consistent volume he's capable. I don't know if he's capable of getting consistent volume. I think he'll have some monster games, but I don't know if I'm comfortable starting him every week. That's why he's not my top 24 right now. The talent's there. It's just they're so talented on that team. It's a good football team. And I just don't see how he carves out a role that's that significant for fantasy. Yeah.
What about you, Pat? What are your thoughts on Gabe Davis?
Yeah, so I understand Ryan hesitating a little bit. He just hasn't shown the ability to command consistent targets yet, even when he has had the chance to get heavier snap shares. So we'll see, but you have to like the big playability. I mean, he's averaged 16.4 yards per catch for his career. I think he's scored touchdowns on something like 17.6% of his receptions and 10.4% of his targets. So the big playability is there for sure. It's nice that he's going to be playing typically, 90% snap shares. The targets should go up. I am comfortable with him. I think just inside my top 20 at wide receiver. I think he is wide receiver 20 or 21. I can't remember. So yeah, I mean, it's a leap of faith, but I think I'm willing to take it with him this year.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I think touchdowns is what's going to get him there. I think with the more snaps, like you mentioned, the rate of touchdowns that he gets. His rookie season, he actually led the team in touchdown receptions up until the very last week when Stephon Diggs kind of had a big game. But I mean, he just seems to be the guy that Josh Allen looks for in that red zone area. So I love Gabe Davis this year, and this news is definitely encouraging for those shares that I have of Gabe Davis in some of my dynasty leagues. Staying with the Buffalo Bills here, we're going to go to Devin Singletary a little bit. Kind of a popular breakout candidate. Potentially, he had a very good end of the season last year. Got competition in there now with James Cook, and then of course Zach Moss looks good in the preseason. Now there's reports that it might be a 3-headed monster there in Buffalo. What are your thoughts with this news here, Pat? Are you touching this backfield at all?
No, man, Zach Moss, like Michael Myers coming back from the, you just can't get rid of him. You think he's dead, and he just keeps coming back. I do have some hesitation to invest here. But then again, I'm often going wide receiver heavy in the early rounds, and these guys are going to be the kind of guys I'm looking at with the builds on some of my roster. So, I'm willing to make a little bit of a leap of faith with Cook. Now, I wasn't initially in on him because just like it hasn't been, Josh Allen has not thrown to his backs all that much. Like the percentage of targets for running backs versus, for Buffalo versus the league, they've been in like the bottom quarter as far as targeting running backs. But maybe that's because they just didn't have the right guy. I'm hoping that's the case because Cook is a guy who, he's not just going to flare out of the backfield. This is a guy who can run patterns. He is a legitimate pass catching running back. So, I'm hoping with his speed and pass catching ability, they find a spot for him to be decent. I have a lot of respect for Devin Singletary. I think he more than maximizes his abilities, but man, just reintroducing Moss into the mix just makes this such an ugly situation. It's just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I can see Devin Singletary being a 20-20 guy, and then Zach Moss comes in when they get down towards the red zone there, the end zone guy, and then James Cook is the pass catcher, which I agree. I think James Cook is the one I probably want now because of that PPR upside. And the Bills seem to be wanting to go that direction because they did try to sign J.D. McKissick in the offseason, who then ended up spurning them and going back to the Washington Commanders. But so they're looking for that pass catcher running back, and they went and drafted James Cook. Ryan, what are your thoughts here on this backfield?
I think it's a nightmare. But the way it's being valued in fantasy now, it's not terrible. We have Singletary going as RB29, essentially late 7th round, which even if he gets 35, 40% of the market share rushing, that's still flex worthy. And compared to other running backs at that price, it's not that terrible. I prefer not to do that. But it's not terrible. And you mentioned James Cook, same thing. He's given a really good value. They're worth the dart throws. If one person takes ahead, I'd rather take my chance on Cook. But where Singletary is, I think the market's actually appropriate for him, unlike it's been in the past.
Yeah, I think news like this actually helps that, right? Because he's going to be dropping ADP because of stuff like this, where he's going to come down to where maybe he is a value at some point towards the end there. So I agree.
If he's there in the 9th, 10th round, if he just keeps plummeting like that, it's almost irresponsible not to take him.
Yeah, agreed. Let's stick with the running backs here and go to two rookies that potentially could have the number one spot for their teams. One of them was sort of expected, one of them not so much. We'll start with Brian Robinson here, who seems to, at least from preseason reports, have taken over that number one spot from Antonio Gibson, who seems to be returning punts now, apparently. First of all, Pat, are you buying that news that Robinson's sort of taken over that spot, or do you still believe in Gibson? And then what do you think of Robinson's sort of prospects this year?
I'm stubbornly still believing in Gibson. You've got this guy who, and I've been kind of pounding the table on this, this guy who's Jonathan Taylor sized and has Jonathan Taylor's speed and has scored double-digit touchdowns in his first 2 years in the league and has pass catching experience as a former college wide receiver and played with a cracked shin bone last year. And we're going to throw this guy overboard already? Really? And I know my buddy Cody Carpentier posted a thread on Twitter over the weekend where just in case you think that Ron Rivera hates Antonio Gibson, here's some press conferences where he was just talking about Gibson glowingly like he was a son or something. So, yeah, Bo McBride, I know Bo does not think that much of Brian Robinson's prospect pedigree. I think Robinson's okay. I think he's a decent enough prospect. I think, for a big guy who can maybe even catch a few passes, I like him. I have nothing against Robinson, but I don't think he is just going to take away this job from Antonio Gibson. And is Gibson a guy I'd feel comfortable starting? Yeah, I think he's going to get at least a dozen touches a game. It's not ideal that he's going to lose some passing down work to McKissick. It's not ideal that he might have a goal line challenger with Robinson, but I still think he's going to get enough work, where you can justify starting him in the flex. And I still think there's big upside here. The dude just turned 24, and size, speed, pass catching ability, toughness. I'm not getting off the bandwagon.
Yeah, the good thing about your position there is that Gibson's falling and Robinson's coming up in ADP, so you're probably going to be getting him in your home leagues here in this weekend, the next 2 weekends, pretty cheap. And if you end up being right, you're going to really hit a slam dunk there because you've got a wide receiver one, a running back one almost in Gibson. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this Gibson, Robinson, and even throwing McKissick in the mix as well? It's almost like the Buffalo Bills backfield as well.
It's one of those things I was very much against a couple months ago, but the more you think about it, it makes sense. What team doesn't have 2 or 3 decent running backs now? They obviously needed depth behind him. Because even if McKissick would have they would have had to get 2 running backs in. They just didn't have that there. Like Pat said, he's done nothing but produce and shown that he's a good football player. They're going to be a run first football team. That defense, when healthy, even though they just lost Chase Young, they're supposed to be play good defense, pound the rock football. So they need those running backs, and they could be a top 10 rush attempt team. And everybody can get their work in. And that's something I really don't doubt with them. So Gibson's a super value now as he keeps plummeting.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you look 2 years ago when Gibson's rookie season, I think McKissick had 100 targets that year, and Gibson was still RB13. That's a pretty good, workload there for both of those guys. And you spread that out a little bit more with Robinson getting a few more touchdowns, maybe that hurts Gibson a little bit, but I think I'm still in on Gibson as well, especially at the value you can get him at right now.
Yeah, I got him in an auction draft with $200 budget for $6.
$6, yeah.
Early, people just didn't want him. It was a steal. I felt like I was stealing.
Wow, yeah, definitely a steal. The other rookie I was talking about is out in Houston. He was sort of expected to possibly compete for that number 1 job. Marlon Mack was there for a little bit, but now it looks like Pierce has that job. I don't know how much that job is worth in fantasy. It hasn't been worth a whole lot in recent years. What are your thoughts on Dameon Pierce, Ryan?
I like Dameon Pierce. I think it's his job to lose now. He shows that explosive ability. We all like Marlon Mack's good, but Marlon Mack's a number 2 back. They may have struck gold with Pierce and the way it looks with his big playability and just be on pound between tackles, do a little bit of everything. I like him there. Even if it's not a greatest situation, if he still gets volume, he's a flex player. And he's cheap because that role hasn't been completely named to him yet. So I'm drafting him as much as I can right now because even if there's a 50% chance he's the back at his value, that's a chance I'm definitely willing to take.
Yeah, just going back to the volume, I think it was 2 years ago. David Johnson was still there, and he was terrible. He was terrible efficiency-wise, but he had tons of volume, so he was worthy, to be started in fantasy leagues just because he was getting all the carries.
And he was washed.
Exactly. Pat, what are your thoughts on Dameon Pierce here in Houston?
Yeah, I mean, I want to kind of latch onto something Ryan just said and that you can put him in the flex spot. And 2 weeks ago, I was not there with him. And that was kind of the thing. These guys come into the league and we spend all spring, the rest of the spring and summer, talking about ceilings and what their peak potential could be. But this time of year, we have to start converting this into actual fantasy football. We have to be practical about it. Can we start these guys or not in managed leagues? And 2 weeks ago, I was thinking no, Pierce is a part-time back in a lousy offense. But now after seeing him and seeing, how good he looked in preseason week 1 and seeing that they just totally put him on ice in preseason week 2, we've seen enough, you're good, you're going to get a lot of work. Now I'm willing to think that he could be a flex starter for me in a managed league. So I'm in now. What we've seen is pretty exciting.
Yeah, you can get him late in draft still too. They haven't really risen his draft stock too much as far as ADP goes, and that might change in the next 2 weekends if you haven't done your draft yet. But he's still pretty cheap for a potential starting running back, even if it's on a bad team. I think he still's got some great value.
I don't think Houston's as bad now as they were either. Like,
Fair.
Davis Mills wasn't that bad. Nico Collins gets a little bit better. Brandon Cook's still Brandon Cooks. It's not that terrible.
Yeah,
It's not great, but it's not the absolute shit show that it was.
fair. They have some talent there. All right, let's wrap this up here with an injury news here, and this is a guy that seems to always be in the news for injuries. Michael Thomas out again with a hamstring injury. They say it doesn't sound serious, but we've heard that before with his ankle, and he missed two years with the ankle, basically. What are you doing with Michael Thomas right now, Pat? Are you drafting him at all, even if he falls a little bit?
I think I got my first Michael Thomas share last week somewhere, but that's kind of it. I was kind of fading him. Man, like the hamstring thing is not what you want to see. It was really encouraging that he was healthy, and the videos of him working out look good and everything. And I was kind of starting to get back on board, but the hamstring thing is like enough to throw up a big red light for me, I think.
Yeah. What about you, Ryan? Are you buying Thomas even at a value?
At a value, it's worth the chance, I guess, but I don't trust them. Like, I'd rather take dart throws later on the other weapons in that offense with either Olave or Landry if I had to take the bets just because how cheap they are. So he still scares me, man, because I don't know, like, if he sometimes even wants to play with Jameis.
Yeah.
Because he was so spoiled with Breeze. It's a whole situation with him.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at too. Is if what if they start out like 1-5, 1-6? Michael Thomas. It was rumored that he didn't want to play. The year that he got hurt because he just was a bad team. No Drew Brees. But if they're a bad team again this year, does he just go out again? Do you lose him for the season with an injury that he just doesn't want to play anymore? So it's always a risk with him. I think he's a great talent. He just unfortunately can't stay healthy, and I'm out. I don't think I own any shares of Michael Thomas. I almost owned one. Almost made a trade for him before this injury happened. I thought, okay, he's showing up as being elite in camp now, and he's crushing it. And I'm like, okay, I can get this guy pretty cheap. And I almost pulled a trade off it, and now I think I'm out completely on Michael Thomas, his latest injury. All right, let's get to our.
What you gonna do? Buy or sell?
All right, we're gonna do buy or sell ADP edition. So your buys are going to be guys that you're buying at their current ADP because you think they're going to be able to outperform their ADP, and then guys you are selling are guys that you are just not going to be drafting at their current ADP. We'll go around the room. Ryan, we'll go to you first here. Give me one of your buys.
Dude, Saquon Barkley right now is going 24th in draft, so end of the second round, and he has RB1 potential. Like, he's the 14th running back off the board. Get out of here. Like, he has receiving. We've seen him put up 2,000-yard season from scrimmage. That team had 114 targets to the running backs last year, and he only got part of them because he was banged up all year. If he's fully healthy, which it sure as hell looks like, dude, he could be a top 5 player, even higher. He's one of the few people you can get in that end of the second round with RB1 upside or 1 overall fantasy upside. Like, I'm all in. I'm not going to leave a second round without him.
Nice.
If
Yeah.
I'm picking high.
Barkley kind of burned me last year, so I don't think I have any shares of Barkley. But yeah, end of the second round is definitely a good value.
What running back hasn't burned somebody? McCaffrey's gone down. Henry's gone down.
Fair.
Cook's gone down. That's half of your top 10. Like, it's part of the position for running back. I'm taking the chance there. I don't care if he did it before, but now he's cheap.
All right, good stuff. What about you, Pat? Give me one of your buys.
I'm going to go with Travis Etienne.
that.
Jeff, we were talking before the show about how we got this big mock draft thing going on the Fantasy Pros Discord channel today. And I was banging out a bunch of mocks with people. And I think did 4 or 5 mocks. And I think I wound up with Etienne in 3 of them. Like, I didn't know how much I liked him until today, almost. But I'm encouraged by the usage. Not that I was worried he wasn't going to get any run, but I really think that James Robinson is going to be just a supporting actor this year. And like, not only is ETN playing all three downs with the ones, and he's also running a lot of routes, which is great. Cause like, I think he's going to be among the running back leaders in receptions this year. I don't think there's much question about that. He's got the chemistry with Trevor Lawrence from Clemson. And like, it's easy to forget because he was out of action last year. This is a dude who scored 78 touchdowns in 55 career college games.
Wow.
I mean, he's like the only explosive player the Jaguars have on offense, really. So I think they're going to get it into his hands a lot. I think the workload is going to be maybe bigger than we were anticipating in the offseason. So like, I'm pretty good getting him in, anywhere from like late third, mid fourth. He seems to go in that range most of the time, and I'm pretty happy with him in that general area.
Yeah, I actually had ETN on my list too, and I have him listed down as RB19, 42 overall, so kind of what you just said. And I'm kind of looking at him as kind of like DeAndre Swift last year. He's going to be the junk time guy, right? Jags are still a bad team. You know, when they're down in the fourth quarter, it's not going to be James Robinson getting the carries. It's going to be ETN on the field catching, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 passes in the fourth quarter trying to come back. So, I mean, that's just going to pad his stats even more. And like you mentioned, obviously Trevor Lawrence has a chemistry with him already. So I think that definitely wheels up for ETN. But since you took mine, I'm going to take another one here. I'm going to go with Rashad Bateman, wide receiver 39 right now, outside of the top wide receiver, wide receiver 3. It's what's crazy to me. You figure Hollywood Brown last year was a receiver 1 before L-Jax got hurt. He finished the season as a low-end wide receiver 2. Bateman stepping into that similar volume as the number 1 receiver there. I just don't see how he can not be a wide receiver 3 at least. I think he's more closer to the wide receiver 2 range personally. I know there's talk of the Ravens going with a run-heavy approach and this and that, but I think the Ravens were 3rd in rushing attempts last year already. So they were already pretty run-heavy last year. They just happened to also be very pass-heavy last year. I think they're the number 1 pass as far as attempts go last year, and then 3 overall for rushing. But I still think Rashad Bateman is going to be a low-end receiver 2, maybe a high-end receiver 3, but definitely not receiver 4, which is what he's basically being drafted at right now. All right, let's stick with the buys, Ryan. Give me one of your buys.
DK Metcalf at 45 right now. We're completely writing off a guy who was a top 10 wide receiver a year ago, still at 24. I don't care how bad this offense is. This whole team's bad, and they're going to be playing from behind. And volume alone for playing from comebacks is going to be enough to make him fantasy relevant because he's going to force the targets. Tyler Lockett's is the one who's going to suffer the most from Russ being gone. Any quarterback, whether it's Geno or Locke, is going to force feed him the ball because he's the easiest target. He's the most athletic. He has that catch radius.
He's huge.
He's huge. He has big play potential. He can get 150 targets there. Like, I don't care how bad the quarterback play is. If he gets that many targets, he's going to be fantasy relevant. And it's crazy how far he's dropping.
Yeah, agreed. And Kane on the chat here says people underestimate the Geno DK connection, which they were actually pretty decent in a couple games last year. So I definitely am buying DK as well. Pat, give me one of your buys.
I love both of those calls, by the way. I mean, people act like Geno Smith and Drew Lock can't throw a spiral. Yeah, I mean, how far are you going to drop DK? He's going like wide receiver 28 in some drafts. That's crazy. And Jeff, and Jeff, I sniped you on ETN, but you sniped me on Rashad Bateman. So touche there. So I'll go with Trey Lance on this one. The great thing is that he is going in like round 7 or beyond in a 12-team draft. So you can fill up your shopping cart with other things for 6 rounds and still get a guy who could be like potentially a top 5 quarterback. And I do think he immediately has that potential because of the running ability. Like, he is this year's Jalen Hurts. Like, he is going to run for a lot of yards. In his one full college season, he had 1,100 rushing yards and 14 touchdowns. In 2 starts last year, he had 24 rushing attempts. And as a guy who is getting his first exposure to NFL defenses, there will be times when he's confused which is fine because he's just a mobile young QB who's confused is just going to tuck it away and run.
Yeah.
But I do think that like the passing potential is maybe a little underrated. Like I don't think San Francisco would have traded 2 first-round draft picks and I think a third or whatever they gave up to get Lance if they had doubts that he could become an above-average passer. And he gets to throw to Debo and Ayuk and Kittle and run the Kyle Shanahan playbook. So I'm just kind of all in. Like he's inside the top 10 for me. And if you can get him outside like the top 10, 11, 12 quarterbacks and, just stock up on other things first, the ADP is just a bargain, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you on that 100%. As a Niners fan too, I've seen a lot of the camp videos and stuff, and his deep ball is beautiful. I mean, him and Ayuk seem to have that great connection with that deep ball there. So, and obviously he has the running ability. Jalen Hurts last year wasn't necessarily efficient in the passing game, but he ran the ball, so he was in the top 10 in quarterbacks because of that. So yeah, I agree. It's a good pick there. My last buy here is actually a tight end, and I'm going to go a little deep on this one. But Gerald Everett, LA Chargers, stepping into that role that Hunter Henry sort of vacated. I know last year they had some tight ends that kind of filled in there, but I think Everett as an athletic tight end, a bit of a post-hype sleeper because he was kind of hyped up last year going to Seattle. Didn't really do a whole lot for us, but I think with Justin Herbert in that offense, you got Mike Williams, you got Keenan Allen, you got Austin Eckler, but I think Everett becomes that big end zone guy, kind of like what Hunter Henry was when he was there, just to catch those touchdowns there. So he's going right now at tight end 20, 182 overall. If you're one of those wait on tight end guys, I think Everett is definitely a guy that I'd be looking at buying there. All right, Ryan, let's get some sells in here. What you got for your sell?
Hold on. My first sell is David Montgomery. He's going third round now, which is kind of crazy compared to what some of the other talent is at running back around that area. But we're hearing news that they like Khalil Herbert more. I don't trust him. Like he doesn't have the pass catching upside as much. And where he's going ahead of Cam Akers, Etienne, who you talked about, Elijah Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins, Breece Hall, Antonio Gibson. Like it's a lot of guys who I know are better offenses, who roles I trust more, and talent I trust more than his. It's too much right now. Like he went from a value.
I think the offenses now are all from the Packers, and obviously Packers will always kind of rotate running backs in and out. That's kind of a detriment to Davis on that volume, really.
And Herbert fits that role of running back with that former Packers offense liked. And that because he's a little more versatile, he's good as a pass catcher, he can run between tackles a little bit. Like he's more well-rounded running back. Like it's for that price, it's scary, and I just don't like it. RB17.
Yeah, I've been trying to sell him in my main dynasty league, and no one's buying. Nobody wants him. I'm trying to get rid of him, and nobody wants him. So his value definitely has been plummeting quite a bit. Give me one of your sells, Pat.
Leonard Fournette is going around the 2-3 turn, and I just don't want any part of him this year. So he had like this great role as Tom Brady's designated dump off guy last year, but he was kind of the only game in town for Brady because Giovanni Bernard was hurt and Ronald Jones is a complete train wreck in the passing game. We know that. And Keyshawn Vaughn, I guess, wasn't ready. So like he was the guy, and he wasn't even particularly that good, like 6.6 yards a catch and like 4.9 yards per target. But he was just getting all this heavy volume, and it made for a really strong season. But like now they've got Giovanni Bernard back. They've got Rashad White, who, was very good as a pass catcher and pass blocker at the college level. So, and this offensive line has just been like going through all this turmoil up the middle with, the injury to Ryan Jensen and the retirement of Ali Marpet, and Alex Kappa leaves in free agency. And now one of the backups who was going to come in and play guard is hurt. Like just really bad vibes here. I don't think Fournette is going to get as much work as he did last year, as many targets. And I think he's going to be less efficient as a runner because of this offensive line. So, people are very confident drafting him like in late round RB1 territory, and I just don't think he belongs there.
I was so close to having him on my list.
Yeah.
For this too. 100% with you on that.
Yep, he's actually on my list. He was the number 2 guy that I had on my list, but my number 1 guy is a little spicy. I'm selling Najee Harris at RB5, number 7 overall. Like you mentioned, the Bucs offensive line, the Steelers might even be worse than that with their offensive line. Yep. No one's scared of the quarterbacks there. They added Pickens, who's going to take away some of those catches that Najee Harris had last year. At RB5, that's a little steep for me. He may end up like RB12 and be an RB1 this year, but I'm not taking him at the RB5 spot. There's just no way. The volume will probably still be there to some extent, but his price is just too rich for me right now. All right, let's do one more sell here, Ryan. What you got real quick?
Devontae Adams at 11 overall. None of this makes sense. Devontae Adams has 3,000-yard seasons on his career. And in those seasons, his lowest target total is 149. He's going to an offense with Darren Waller, who may be a little nicked up right now, but when he's on the field, he demands targets. Hunter Renfrow is little as athletics feel think, demands target because he's freaking good at football. They're going to run the football, play good defense because that's what their team's built for. They're built to be run first team who just add some offensive weapons. Derek Carr's not going to force feed him the ball. Derek Carr is not Aaron Rodgers. He's going ahead of guys with a ton of upside. I think his ceiling's capped. And at 11, I need a ceiling because it's a lot for me.
Yep.
Over Stephon Diggs, over Tyreek Hill, over CeeDee Lamb, Mike Evans. I think any of them over him. It's just crazy he's that high right now to me.
Yeah, Adams got all that red zone work in Green Bay. I mean, there was a game I remember where they went to Adams on first down. They went to Adams on the second down. And Adams on the third down, they finally scored a touchdown. That's not going to happen, I don't think, in Las Vegas.
Carr's not the kind of dude to do that.
Nope. All right, give me one last sell here, Pat.
I'm going to be really at odds with a couple of my colleagues at Fantasy Pros, Derek Brown and Andrew Erickson, but I just cannot get on the Courtland Sutton bandwagon like everyone else is. I saw him go as early as the round 2, round 3 turn in this flex league best ball draft I'm doing, one of Jake Seeley's drafts. Yeah, I think he went 301. And I just this is a dude who, after Jerry Jeudy had the high ankle sprain in week 1 last year, Sutton was really, really good for the next month and a half. He did kind of look the part of an alpha receiver there. Then Jeudy came back in week 8, and over Sutton's last 11 games, he averaged 4 targets a game, 2 catches a game, and 23.7 receiving yards a game, and didn't score a touchdown in any of those 11 games. He just disappeared. And that just has bothered me. If he was really the alpha guy, how did he go from alpha to just being, Tim Patrick's inferior fellow receiver, for the last, a long stretch, almost a 3-month stretch. So that kind of bothered me. That's not a guy I'm really eager to buy into as this slam dunk must have high end wide receiver 2 type. So I've got other favorite targets in that range. I'm just kind of letting him go, and I'm not even sure he's the best guy on his team. Jerry Jeudy is a good route runner. He's really good after the catch. Would it be a shock if everyone wants to say that Sutton is Russell Wilson's new DK Metcalf? But what if it's not? Jerry Jeudy is the Doug Baldwin or the Tyler Lockett?
Yep.
So
that was the thought when they said that. He's not anywhere that athletic profile DK is.
Mm-mm.
He's not that guy.
Nope, agreed. That's a good one. All right. If you're like me and you play at multiple leagues and you really need to focus when it's time to set lineups, W energy drinks can help. W is clean energy with no jitters, no crash, and no BS. Visit w.gg and use our promo code GF2, get 10% off. Their patented neural factor is in all their drinks, which is designed to help you focus and stay alert. Currently available in 4 flavors, including the most popular Dragonade, which combines dragon fruit, pink strawberry starburst, and lemonade for a sweet and sour taste. So visit w.gg, use promo code GF2, get W Energy, and be better. All All right, let's do some stake your claim guys. These are like basically my guys, kind of guys you're going to be drafting anywhere you can get them. You're trying to buy them wherever you can get them. So I'm going to go to you first, Pat. Give me one of your my guys here.
All right. This is maybe me being a Packer homer, but I'm going to go with A.J. Dillon. So we know that the Packers are probably going to run the ball at a higher rate and throw to their running backs at a higher rate this year with no Devontae Adams. And like their defense is probably the best it's been since like Reggie White was running around out there. Like they have a loaded defense. So I think they're going to have a lot of positive game scripts and be able to run the ball quite a bit. And I think there was kind of a subtle shift last year that maybe a lot of people didn't notice, where over the last 8 regular season games that Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon played together, Dillon averaged like 13.7 carries and Jones averaged 10.2. I mean, Jones has a role for sure. He's going to catch a lot of balls. He's still going to be a big part of the running game, but like Dillon was getting the beefier share of the running game, and he was getting goal line touches. So he's got standalone value for sure. Like you can start him as a running back too, even though he's going to be sharing work with Jones. Yep. And if anything happened to Jones, I mean, the ceiling for Dillon is just enormous. Oh, and he's a pretty good pass catcher, even though he was never asked to do that at Boston College. Like he was freakishly efficient last year. So, yeah, I'm kind of all in there. There's a lot to like.
Yeah, I like that call. And I like, I mentioned earlier about the whole first down, second down, third down, Devontae Adams. Well, Adams is not there anymore. So now it's going to be first down, second down, maybe A.J. Dillon getting those carries instead of Devontae Adams getting those passes. So touchdowns go up, efficiency goes up. I do think that Dillon's especially where he's being drafted too. I mean, he's being drafted after Aaron Jones, pretty, as an RB2. So yeah, definitely all in A.J. Dillon. Ryan, what you got for your my guy?
First was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think we got a little bit scared when they drafted Jameson Williams high. And I think even when he comes back, Amon-Ra has that volume role. Like he got highly targeted. It's not just because he was the only guy. He caught 75% of his passes. So everything thrown his way, he caught. That gives a quarterback, especially one like Jared Goff, confidence. He's got another year, a second year in that offense because it took a little bit to get his role figured out. He's going to be the only guy till at least week 6 or 7. Like, dude, he's just dropping, and he could be their wide receiver 1. He has top 24 potential. He's super cheap now. He's really good. He's a top-tier slot receiver, and I think he's going to be a heavy volume guy. I love Amon-Ra.
Yeah, that's a good call. And I've had this argument multiple times. People are like, oh, he's the only target on the team, this and that. And my thing is, like, one thing to be the only target on the team. It's another thing to be the only target on the team and still ball out. I mean, the defense knew he was the only target on the team. They still couldn't stop him. So I love that Amon-Ra St. call. All right, so one of my guys, I'm going to just mention his name. I've already talked about him on the show a million times. I'm not going to go through this whole stats here, but it's Elijah Mitchell. I love where he's being drafted. I have him in my top 12 in running backs. I know nobody else seems to have him that high, but I do think that in this offense, it's going to be him. I do think they brought in TDP and Jeff Wilson will kind of spell him a little bit, but I think overall, if Mitchell can stay healthy. That's the big key there, is stay healthy. I think he's an RB1. But the guy I want to talk about really is, I haven't talked about much this offseason, is DJ Moore. And Baker Mayfield now, the starter for week 1. The big knock on DJ Moore is he doesn't score touchdowns. I think he's had 4 touchdowns every year of his career. I think this is the year he gets more touchdowns. Baker Mayfield might be his best quarterback, at least in recent history that he's had. So I think DJ Moore's can get a ton of targets. We kind of saw a little bit last year what he's capable of when Sam Darnold first got there, and he was just targeting the hell out of DJ Moore, and he was just crushing it. And for some reason, they went away from him. So I think Baker Mayfield comes back to him. And DJ Moore has a huge season. And for more you get him in drafts, I just love DJ Moore this year. All right, let's do one more my guy, Ryan.
I had a couple guys written down. One was talked about earlier in Bateman, obviously. But I kind of want to change up and go back a year for a dude who I just loved as a rookie. And that's Jaylen Waddle. I think he's fallen in that wayside because of the Tyreek Hill hype coming there. But the truth is, they're phasing Gesicki out of that offense, who was a 90 target guy. Waddle still had 140 plus targets last year. He's electric, and they're opening that offense up. So all those underneath routes he was catching, instead of having those safeties up, they're back now because of the fear of Tyreek Hill. And he has running room now, which he excels at. Even if he gets less targets, I think his yards per and his efficiency goes way up just because of the surrounding talent. And he's going to have a huge year. I'm still all in. He was my wide receiver 2 that year. He's still really good. And I don't think Tyreek Hill hurts. I think it gets him a lot of single coverage and a lot of him running just butt naked down the field. Like, it's going to be good.
Yep. I love that call because, I mean, they got that connection there from college. So, yeah, that's a great call. All right, Pat, give me one more of your my guys.
Yeah, I love that Ryan picked 2 guys who, like, the concerns are the depth chart stuff and the target projections, and, like, 2 guys who are just really good, and, like, bet on the talent and, you know, bet that the talented guys are going to command targets. And like, I totally
Talent
like
wins.
that. Exactly. So I'm hoping that this guy, that talent's going to win with this guy, because Kadarius Toney, what we saw of him in weeks 4 and 5 last year, I mean, that was kind of all we got to see because he dealt with quad, oblique, shoulder, COVID. Like, he had everything happen to him. But in weeks 4 and 5, like, he was just this phenom, man. Yeah, especially week 5, which was like 10 catches, 189 yards against the Cowboys. Doing a lot of it against Trayvon Diggs. Like, he's just a different kind of cat. Like, you can just see it. It's so obvious when you're watching him play. He's just got like this springy athleticism, and he's just so explosive, man. Like, he, you know, he'll do these comeback routes, and he'll catch the ball, like, just staring straight at the quarterback, catch the ball, and then he just explodes out of that and gets upfield so fast. It's amazing. So, like, I have no doubt that if he puts in a healthy season, he's going to be good. After what we saw, like, I don't know if he's capable of being out there and just, like, not being impactful. It's just a matter of whether he actually can stay healthy, or he's going to be another Percy Harvin, like another super athletic, you know, multifaceted dude from Florida who gets hurt all the time. Like, so let's hope this isn't Percy Harvin part 2. And I also love the fact that he's going to be playing for Brian Dable, who's like, you know, this mad scientist on offense who can find some creative usage for him. I trust him a little more than, you know, Jason Garrett to do unique things with Kadarius Toney.
I love that.
And that's the second one of the guys that's just like, I was like looking at putting on, but I'm like, I talk about them a lot. Like, I love, dude, he's so good after the catch. And that's
he's basically free. I mean, he's basically free in drafts right now.
And that's he's their wide receiver 1 if he's healthy. And that's what Daniel Jones needs his skill set to be successful.
Yeah, Jeff, I think he's free in home league, like in analyst drafts. Like, he creeps into the single digit rounds a lot.
Yep. Agreed. All right, let's do some listener questions.
Go ahead. Ask me anything.
All right, so we got a lot of questions here. I may not get to all of these questions, but I want to hit on some of these good ones here. We'll just do like one each for you. So we'll go to you first, Pat, for this first one. Keeper league. Of course, right now everybody's kind of putting their keepers together. His options are Kyle Pitts or Michael Pittman. It's full point PPR. He says he's torn about, you know, not keeping Pitts if he ends up being that legit elite tight end. But what are your thoughts here, Pitts or Pittman?
Oh man. So if we're starting, the key for me would be whether he's required to start 3 wide receivers or 2. Like, if it's 3 wide receivers, I think I'm going Pittman and, you know, building that wide receiver core, because in that kind of a league, like, Pittman's a top 25 guy for me. And Pitts is more a guy I feel good, like, starting in about the middle of the 3rd round. So I think I've got Pittman about a half round ahead. Really close call if it's if he only needs to start 2 wide receivers, then it's almost more like a coin flip.
Yeah, that's a good call. I think I'm with that as well. Sort of a caveat there on how many receivers you got to start. This next one here, Ryan, is from Ghost Elite on Discord. It's a 12-team full point PPR. He can keep up to 3 keepers. His options are Cup, Chase, Waddle, and Saquon. He's actually considering not keeping Cup and keeping Saquon over him because of the receivers he already has. What are your thoughts there with Cup versus Saquon in the keeper league?
I just talked about my absolute love for Waddle, and out of that group of people, Waddle's the one I'm not keeping.
Wow.
Like, Cup is still Cup. Like, he's going to get force fed the ball. He's probably not going to have the season that he had. If he still has 75% of that season, it's a top 5 receiver. Jamar Chase has wide receiver 1 potential, and Saquon, who I talked about earlier, has RB1 potential. Like, even just going off pure ADP, I'm leaning that way. And if you get those 2 receivers in Saquon, that gives you a little bit more wiggle room in your draft. I hate cutting Waddle out of that group, but it's kind of the easy choice out of that group for me.
All right, fair point. All right, next one here is another keeper question for you, Pat. So his options are DK Metcalf, and the caveat here is how many years they can keep him for. So DK Metcalf for 2 more years, or you can keep Gabe Davis for 3 more years. What are you going with here?
Oh, man. I got to go with DK here. Like, I just, Davis might be a really good player. And, maybe I'll regret this if he explodes and has a 1,200-yard, 10 TD season. But, like, we've seen Metcalf and what he's capable of doing. And hopefully it's only one bad season of quarterbacking for the Seahawks. They're bad enough to get, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or Will Levis or someone like that and, fix things there. And we're no longer worried about who's delivering the balls to Metcalf. So I still got to go Metcalf there.
Yeah, I think I'm with you as well, just because, like you mentioned, the sort of unknown of Gabe Davis and will he be that alpha eventually? All right, Ryan, I'm going to go to you for this one. It's another keeper league question. He's got 3 keepers. He can keep just one of these 3 guys, and he loses a draft pick for each one. So CMC for a first-round pick, Devontae Adams for a second-round pick, or Najee Harris for a third-round pick. You only keep one of those. Actually, no, I'm sorry. You can keep 2. So who are you cutting out of those 3?
I'm cutting Adams. Najee Harris, I know you kind of didn't like him earlier.
But third round, it's a different point.
But third round, he's still going to get a ton of volume. He's gonna come close to 300 touches, and I don't care how bad the efficiency is. That's fantasy points, and that's an RB1. Worst case scenario, he's a high end RB2, which I don't think he is. I think he has a top 5 upside. That's easy, and CMC at 7, easy.
All right. Got in a super flex redraft, lowest tier of willing to go after and win with plus guys like Jameis Winston. He's towards the end of his draft. He's thinking about going receiver, running back in the beginning there. What are your thoughts on that strategy?
I'm always kind of willing to, at least with my second quarterback, go dumpster diving in super flex. Like, boy, I don't know how long I'd be willing to wait on my first guy. Like, it would be, if I did wait till like the Jameis Winston level, man, I would want to go rapid fire, but you're just digging yourself such a hole. It's going to be hard to, you're going to get clocked at quarterback every week. So I'm inclined to like spend at least one of my first 3 picks, I think, on that quarterback. And then I'll wait on the second guy, but I don't want to wait on the first guy that long.
Yeah, I agree. I think the fact that he's at the end of the first round there, I think I might go with the best running back receiver in the first round and then get my quarterback on the turn. I think there's enough good quarterbacks that'll be there on the turn that I think I would pick up a quarterback there. And then, like you said, then punt quarterback down the road a little bit for your QB2. All right, Ryan, let's do one last one here. This is from Verified in a 12-man PPR league, valuing rush yards at 5 yards per point.
Cool.
Yeah. Would you take A.J. Dillon in the 10th round or Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 14th? So it's a keeper league.
I've never seen that before for the point for 5 yards. With that, that's essentially doubling his points.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go Dillon.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there.
Because I think Dillon's gets heavy workload in the run game compared to the pass game with Aaron Jones. and I think he's close to 1,000-yard back and 200 attempts guy.
Yeah.
And at a point every 5 yards, I'd take Dillon. If it was normal circumstances, it'd be different, but that's essentially doubling his points.
Yeah, that's a pretty big premium right there, and I agree. I think
that's a huge premium.
Yep, and then the 10th round is not even that big to give up. I mean, if it was like AJ Dillon in the 4th, and I'm on Rice St. Brown in the 14th, that'd be different. But 10th and 14th,
I would draft 4 straight running backs to start. I would go like straight 2001 with my draft strategy.
Yeah, yep.
With that league.
All right, let's get to our final segment of the night.
Get ready for GoingFor2.com's Forgotten Fantasy Player of the Week.
All right, Pat. I'm assuming since you've been doing content creation for a while, you've probably been playing fantasy for even longer. So I'm curious to your forgotten fantasy player here.
Oh, yeah, Jeff. I'm an old man. I go way back to the early 90s when I was in college playing fantasy football. So I'm going to go back to the early 90s with this. And a dude named Barry Foster, who like these days we're looking for something to excite us in the preseason, like the way Damian Pierce ran in preseason week 1 kind of made me think of Barry Foster, because back he came into the league as like a 5th rounder in 1990 and was just like a kick returner. His what he was kind of known for his first 2 years. He thought like this short kickoff, he had a brain fart and thought it was like a punt and was like, didn't jump on it. And so like they were playing the 49ers and the 49ers recovered it at like the Pittsburgh 1 or something and scored the next play. And Foster was, roundly ridiculed for that. But in 92, like their main back, Tim Worley, got a year-long drug suspension and they needed someone to fill the void. And I remember watching Foster play a preseason game in 92 and he looked just electric. I'm like, man, it's the preseason, but gosh, does this dude look good? So we had our draft a couple weeks later and I took Foster in like the 15th round or something like that. Foster that year in 92, 390 carries, which led the league, 1,690 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns. Oh, and he had like 344 receiving yards, or over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. He was second in the league in rushing to Emmitt Smith. And by the way, my first round pick that year was Emmitt Smith. Ooh. So, that was a pretty good backfield. And I think I also got Sterling Sharp like in his breakout year that year. Nice. So that was my first fantasy championship.
Nice. That's awesome right there. That's a great story. And we have not had we've been doing this segment for 4 or 5 years now, and we haven't had Barry Foster come up at all.
426 touches.
Yeah, and then like his 93 and 94 were actually pretty good too on a per game basis, but like he just kept getting hurt, and like by 95 he was out of the league. I mean, it was a short. He was the star that shone brightly and burned out quickly.
So. Yep. Yeah. Good stuff. Great pull right there. I like it. All right, that wraps the podcast up. I want to thank you, Pat, for coming on the podcast. We'll go around the room. Just give us your Twitter handle one more time, and if you wanted to plug anything you got coming up, we'll go to you first, Pat.
Yeah, Jeff, Ryan, thanks a lot for having me, guys. This was fantastic. A lot of fun. People can find me on Twitter at Fitz_FF. Find all my stuff at FantasyPros.com and check out the Fitz on Fantasy podcast.
Good stuff. Ryan, you got anything going on?
Find me Twitter 534. Find me the normal here Wednesday nights at the Armchair Fantasy Show. Find me over at the Rookie Big Board or Dynasty Big Board podcast. Comes out Wednesday mornings.
Good stuff. All right, as always, guys, you can follow me on Twitter at JeffLambert77. We do have a special Friday show coming up. If you play daily fantasy, me, Ryan, and Tim, our DFS show. That's usually during the season.
I'm not on that.
I'm sorry. I said Ryan. Gerson and Tim. Sorry about that. You just stuck in my head. Gerson and Tim on the DFS show. We're going to do like a DFS 101 type show. We're going to go over like what stacking means and what correlations mean. So if you're into DFS or if you want to get into DFS, definitely check that out. We'll be live Friday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For Pat, for Ryan, I'm Jeff. We will see y'all next week.